and then his brother, played by Mickey Rourke, rolls up.
Such a handsome young man. I hope he grew up to be beautiful, that guy.
That's not how that went.
I hope he just looks that great forever.
He was starting to look a little ragged, though. You know,
He looked amazing. Like, first of all,
he did look really great, but there was like some like weird.
Well, he's just this
flaky
little
stuff on
he was
his
a little
face.
pockmarked, but like
Pockmarked,
you
yeah.
don't think that he's gonna grow up and to become Admiral Akbar. Like, it's just outrageous.
That's
like,
true. Welcome to the Grande Bouffe.
The Big Feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy. As always, we are here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer each week.
I didn't end with a question mark this time. I said it very authoritatively and confidently. Every day before the podcast now, I stand in the Wonder Woman position to exert my power presence and to feel the true me shine through.
I saw this cute Latina girl walking down the street with her. She had a leather Wonder Woman jacket.
Oh,
It
cool.
was really like well made.
Yeah.
You know, it was cool.
It's fucking cool.
Yeah, I was impressed.
I like it.
So, this week we're talking about Francis Ford Coppola, who famously crashed and burned, one of the 70s directors alongside Spielberg, and
He's like the best director of all time in a way. Like,
well, he would be
if he stopped making movies.
if he had stopped making movies at Apocalypse Now.
I would say, yeah, I wouldn't say he's one of the greatest. I wouldn't say he is the greatest director of all time. I would say he directed.
He's not even close.
I would say he directed the best movies of all time. I would say
I wouldn't.
my number
I
one,
wouldn't go
my
that
number
far.
1 and 2, or a shared number 1, or
Yeah.
at least top 3.
Godfather.
Is Godfather
1 and 2.
Yeah, so he's the director of those movies.
Right.
Yeah.
With some help from Robert Evans, if you hear Robert Evans' side of the story.
First of all, everything that happened there was my idea. I was lying in my mobile hospital bed
With my sunglasses on.
calling all of the shots.
And Connie, what was her last name? Connie was down there. And when I say down there, I mean she was down there.
Getting 3 blowjobs, changing lenses on the cameras at the same time.
And then there was Bridget. There was Connie. There was Bridget. Who was the other one? Rebecca? I think Rebecca was there.
You know, so Coppola actually wanted to fire his daughter from the 3rd movie, and I said, this is actually where the saying comes from. I said, I think the kid should stay in the picture. And so that was my last film.
The kid stays in the picture. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I did a long time ago. It's amazing.
I love that. We gotta. I just want to see it again. I don't know. We whether we talked about it or whether we did it on the show or not. I don't care. It's just such a. It's cinematic ice cream. It's a cinematic banana split, if you will.
Bob Evans is as I call him. Oh wait, that's the name of that
friend
restaurant.
Bob. Last time I saw Bob, we were having spaghetti at his place. Wonderful place in Malibu.
Like, so I was with Marty up in Aspen last year, and came over was Bobby De Niro.
And Bob Evans.
And then Bob Evans.
A wheelchair. I was shocked that he was in a wheelchair.
He was in a wheelchair, but there was he built it himself, all by himself. He invented it.
He was smoking a joint at the time. Still had the sunglasses on. Never took the sunglasses off the whole night.
What a lunatic that guy.
Oh, I know.
He's the best part of Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. Was a really formative book for me in understanding like modern filmmaking, and Coppola plays
and the excesses of 70s culture.
And the excesses, and it's just the way in which it just completely broke from what a film could be, and like changed with people's psychology and changed society's psychology.
And he stole Ally McGraw from Steve McQueen. Or no, Steve McQueen. Sorry, Steve McQueen stole Ally McGraw from Bob Evans.
Yeah, that's
what happened.
That's the order.
That's what happened.
That's the order
That's
that
what
makes
happened.
sense.
But I love his description of seducing Ally McGraw.
Well, how's it go?
Oh, it's too dirty for me to paraphrase. But that brings us to Mr. Francis Ford Coppola, who has at various times gone by Francis Coppola. At this point, I believe he was still Francis Ford Coppola.
Do you think in that winery that you have to call him Don?
Yes, I do.
I think so.
I'm certain of it.
So yeah, I mean, speaking of the sort of a trajectory of like 70s films, this is kind of a good example because you have one of these renegade filmmakers that's sort of changing the world with their movies. Like, let's list off some big ones.
Okay, well, we've already listed off The Godfather. We've done the conversation.
We did the conversation.
So we're returning to Coppola for the second
Apocalypse
season.
Now. Okay.
And then it all went downhill.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I should mention that Finian's Rainbow, which was one of his first...
Finnegan's, right?
Finian's?
Just Finian?
Finian.
Oh, I'm thinking of The Wake.
Finian's Rainbow was the first film that I ever saw, and it was in a drive-in. So, the first movie I ever remember seeing was Francis Ford Coppola movie.
Well, before we get too far, I think we usually talk about the beer by now.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just trying to...
Well, let's see what we have here. I have chosen the beer this week, and it's JUKEBOX-HERO from Revolution Brewing. And I thought because we're doing Rumblefish, which is based on an S.E. Hinton novel, and long before there were young adult writers in the droves that there are now, there was S.E. Hinton.
And they didn't write about your stupid dystopian futures.
No.
They wrote about our dystopian 50s.
Yeah, it was all the delinquent 50s era stuff, which is the opposite world of what you saw in the Lucas movie, American Graffiti.
Right.
American Graffiti really prettied up that world. But it was...
American Graffiti was a nerd dreaming about the great times they weren't having back then. And these movies, these movies, I mean The Outsiders, really.
Yeah, Outsiders.
Is from a woman who... She's in this movie. I guess she would have been old enough to have been pretty...
The film was made in
era.
1983. The beer was made more recently. And so, JUKEBOX-HERO, it's a Black India Pale Ale from Revolution Brewing. I love Revolution Brewing. We've had their beers on the show before, and this one they always have their characters on their labels as hop characters. So this guy is a hop head, literally, with sunglasses, and he's all red. It looks like he's wearing leather. He's got his guitar. It looks like it's not really a Clash star. It could be a Clash. He's got the Joe Strummer Telecaster. So maybe that is a little shout out to the Clash. And this is one tasty beer. It's got a really nice aroma.
What's going on in beers when they taste like smoky like this, like someone like, and I say this in the best way, I love it, and I'll name some other beers so I have this. It tastes like someone took a drag off a cigarette and then blew it into a straw into your beer. Like, I love that. There's a Dos Peras from Yazoo Brewery, which has a similar taste. If we get some Yazoo up here sometime, that'd be great. That's a southern beer.
So I thought this beer was appropriate because it's all about the jukebox, and this movie, even though the characters wear Converse sneakers that are clearly not of the 50s era, we
got to get into that in a second.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some things, but it's it's that scene where guys would wear tight white T-shirts and blue jeans and roll up the sleeves on their T-shirts and stand next to the jukebox and pick up teeny bopper girls.
Yeah, some
that
Arthur
were drinking
Fonzarelli
at the soda
stuff here, but with an actual switchblade that can kill people, and not just like with an elbow that can put Rock Around the Clock back on.
So, yeah, Rumblefish is written by S.E. Hinton, the same author as The Outsiders. Which, if you've never read The Outsiders, even though you may be a fully blossomed adult, I highly recommend it. I really enjoyed that book when I was growing up.
The Outsiders, also a Coppola movie. What's the chronology on these? I think they came
back to back, and I'm glad you brought that up because
it's very much I feel like they're in context of each other. You gotta it would be weird to just believe this movie was in a vacuum.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The vacuum analogy is going to prove kind of applicable here because what happened was Coppola spent however many years he spent 2 or 3 years making Apocalypse Now and drove himself crazy as the documentary made by his wife. If you've never seen that one,
You know why? You know why she has all that audio? Is because she was secretly recording him for divorce proceedings.
I'm not surprised.
And then she's like,
Oh, I'm gonna double dip on this one.
yeah, I don't think it was like, you know what, he's a great guy. Like, I'm gonna make a documentary. It's like, well, I might as well.
Yeah.
Might as well use. I
Ouch.
might as well demonstrate that I've been secretly directing these movies the whole time.
Oh my God. So he kind of shot his wad on Apocalypse Now. He gave it everything he had, and then he decided, I'll never expose myself to such degradation and insanity again. And so he set about making this film, One from the Heart, which if you've never seen it, I recommend that you avoid it. It is one of the worst films
I believe it's a musical.
ever. It is a musical, and Coppola had the genius idea of recreating Las Vegas on a soundstage. So instead of doing the right thing, which is just go to Las Vegas because it's already built,
Or not make this movie, but yeah.
or not make the movie, would have been great. It does have Raul Julia in a really good role.
And I believe this is the origin of, is it New York being a big deal? That's what I've heard. I think is.
Well, that's Scorsese.
Oh, you're right.
So
I'm thinking of New York. Yeah.
Right. So this is one.
This is the one that there's not like any real relevance to.
It's Terry Garr, Raul Julia, Nastasia Kinski, and Harry Dean Stanton's in it, and it is just god awful. And he threw more money than God has at this movie, and of course it died a dog's death, and it bankrupted him. All of the goodwill and money that he had made off of Godfather and Apocalypse Now.
I believe it's Godfather 1, Apocalypse Now, Godfather 2 in
that's
quick
right.
succession.
Yeah, and so he ruined himself is what happened. He had it looked like Lucas and Coppola were going to turn San Francisco into this mecca, this northern Hollywood, Northern California Hollywood.
Zoetrope Films, right?
Zoetrope Films, and this, so he squandered Zoetrope Films on One from the Heart, and taught himself a lesson and decided, okay, well, I'm going to come back and I'm going to make small movies. I'm just going to do a couple of kind of surefire adaptations of these S.E. Hinton books, and
it's a really bizarre thought to do 2 in a row.
Yeah,
like. And so was it The Outsiders first?
Outsiders first. Outsiders in color.
Outsiders, great film.
With the Dream Team cast. Much better movie than this one.
I think it's easy to forget. I think a lot of people know The Outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
I think a surprisingly small fraction of them are aware that it's a Francis Ford Coppola film.
I agree.
I think they lump it in with the Rat Pack movies. Somebody like they might be like, is that a?
Well, it has
was it John Hughes?
right.
You could conceivable believe that
because it has everybody in it. Tom Cruise is in it, for crying out loud.
So let's talk a little bit about The Outsiders, which is it's got this ensemble feel to it, which is just larger than life, and all of these characters are just like bursting out of the frame, and they fit together in a way that like you've never met anyone like this, but with like the vivaciousness that your friend group and everything you love about them comes real, like they're like that.
Well, and there is some spillover. There is a connection between Rumblefish and Outsiders because Diane Lane is in both films.
Ooh.
Oh, I know.
Oh man, they shoot her like Lauren
she's so
Bacall
dreamy. She is so dreamy.
It's amazing.
But it's true that the chemistry between Matt Dillon and Ralph Macchio and Patrick Swayze and Rob Lowe and Emilio Estevez and Tom Cruise in The Outsiders is really powerful. It's really cool. It's super fun. Super fun movie.
So what if like a similar group of guys, but like just like 3 dudes? Okay. And all they do is like go to a bar that Tom Waits runs.
Oh, Rumblefish.
Yeah, but it's not. But it's in black and white. And it's not
except for the fish,
and
except for the beta
and
fish.
if in everything that was sort of sexy and a fun throwback, if it was instead of that just confusing and like always about to be a musical but not really. How do you like that? Does that sound good?
Yeah, it really does. It does seem like it's bursting at the seams to be West Side Story. It really wants to. At any moment, it wants to be West Side Story.
The scene where he's fighting the blonde guy who looked like Gary Busey.
Yeah, we got to talk about that scene, and then his brother, played by Mickey Rourke, rolls up.
Such a handsome young man. I hope he grew up to be beautiful. That guy.
That's not how that went.
I hope he just looks that great forever.
He was starting to look a little ragged, though. You know,
he looked amazing. Like, first of all,
he did look really great, but there was like some like weird.
Well, he's just his
flaky
little
stuff on
he was
his
a little
face.
pockmarked, but
Pockmarked,
you
yeah.
don't think that he's gonna grow up and to become Admiral Akbar. Like, it's just outrageous.
That's
like,
true.
What? Well, you know, he's had his comeback, which is more than you can say for.
Emilio Estevez.
Yeah, Emilio Estevez. So, do you want to go over the plot of Rumblefish, which is both very simple and very. Yeah, I think it's just simple. I was gonna say it's very simple and very confusing, but no, it's just pretty simple.
Well, all right. So all right. So there we go.
You're pulling it up.
Well, yeah. Mickey Rourke is Motorcycle Boy.
No, he's not.
And
he's
the motorcycle boy. As you see early in the film, because it's spray painted, the motorcycle boy reigns. So you're set up for this 50s Americana iconography.
It's very quadrophenia. Are you familiar with?
I love Quadrophenia.
Yeah,
and he is like a throwback to Brando's character from the Wild One, and so there. I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but there is a significant amount of homoeroticism in the film, just because of of these American male degenerate archetypes. Can we call them degenerates? They're degenerates, right?
Well, I think the movie is trying to. Let's go to the plot just like real quick, so we can delve into like it's more.
And also, you know, Matt Dillon's character, like they had Rusty James. If that's not a porno name, I've never heard. Rusty James. Did you hear Rusty James is going to be on the set today?
Hey, gamer, Rusty James. Oh boy, yeah. So anyway, the plot of this is basically.
But you got Rusty James, Matt Dillon's character.
Rusty James is the toughest guy in town. We hear about his brother,
and his older brother is the motorcycle boy, played by Mickey Rourke, and Rusty James wants to be his older brother so bad. That's his whole motivation in life is to be just like
motorcycle boy. Comes back to town. He'd been in California.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of bummed out. He's seen a little too much of life,
mm-hmm.
and he's obsessed with these beta fish or rumblefish.
And why has he come back?
Great question.
You know, there's a lot of unmotivation in the plotting of this movie.
Yeah, and he's obsessed with these rumblefish.
He likes to go to the pet store, and he likes to look at the little beta fish, which, if you don't know, those are the little blue and red fish that they have to keep in between little glass
had them before.
Partitions.
Yeah.
I used to work at a pet shop. Yeah, and
they really will. It's not an exaggeration. They will fight each other.
They will tear each other.
Cool.
Because they're beautiful fish, but if you put them together, they'll fight each other and they'll tear. They have these lovely fins. They'll just chew and rip those things to.
It's really unpleasant.
They look.
In high school, some of us all bought some beta fish, and we really thought it would be a cool thing to put them in a jar together. And after about 10 minutes of two of them being together, we're like, this is really sad and depressing. And we split them all up, and we just kept our own fish from then on, because you don't actually want fish to fight each other. So there's this movie, and including this fish thing, it's like It is some like 7th grade level low hanging metaphor fruit. Throughout this whole thing, and it's like it's kind of
it's beautifully shot. It's they're
almost too beautifully.
Yeah, they're really putting a fine point on the nostalgia in a way. The 50s nostalgia for gangs and this relationship between society, this antagonistic relationship between society and young males who were trying to stake out their individuality.
Yeah, and this would have been, I think it would have been an interesting film to me if it was about like young black men.
Yeah.
But first of all, the period.
Well, the period is really muddy.
It's a very 50s-ish 1980s.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is.
And so, like,
it almost reads as it wants to be a neo-noir.
Yeah, like, and so you don't have any sense of like, wait, what is the context of these guys? They keep talking about the 50s almost like they were like, or like the old gangs, like they were these like ancient warriors. Like there's some like late era Greeks that were like, man, back in the day with Achilles and Odysseus and stuff, those were the real dudes. Like we're just fucking punks.
Well, Motorcycle Boy what is he, like 25?
He's 25.
He's 25.
No, sorry. He's like, I think he's like 20.
He's 22.
He's 22,
but he looks 25.
But he looks 25. And if someone is turning 27 next week, I'm like, go fuck yourself.
Well, all right, here's the thing. I'll come clean. I remember seeing this movie when I lived in San Diego, and
you just wanted to dance afterwards.
It kind of
You just like it's only they dance.
You busted me. It's true. I just wanted to dance after this thing was over. I think that it seems like The Outsiders and Rumblefish came out pretty close together, maybe within a year of each other. And I'd seen The Outsiders, and so I was really excited to see this movie. I had a multiplex right across the street from me, and I had a drive-in cinema that I worked at, the Campus Drive-In, a block away from me in El Cajon, off of El Cajon Boulevard in San Diego. And so I remember going to see Rumblefish and really loving it when I was a kid. Oh yeah, I loved this movie.
I would have thought that it would be like if you saw The Outsiders and then this, it's like, I saw 300, I loved it. What's this guy's next movie? Oh, what, Up in the Air with George Clooney? Cool. Like it seems so unrelated.
Yeah. Well, I see that now. I agree with you. I was the one who chose this movie because I remembered it as being Coppola's last good movie, which I've now reconsidered, and I think his last good movie was The Outsiders.
Yeah.
But it is really fun to see Matt Dillon and Mickey Rourke vying for James Dean. They're both bringing that really just super testosterone driven.
Diane Lane giving Natalie Wood a run for her money.
Oh boy, she really does. I have to say, Diane Lane is she puts those two guys to shame. She's great.
So this movie really confounds me in a couple ways, and like what do you learn from Coppola from watching this? Like the opening sequence actually was off-putting and like gave me hopes for a certain movie that wasn't actually delivered. It was very Scorsesean. It was very kinetic.
Yeah.
And I realized like I think there's a type of moving camera and kinetic filmmaking that Coppola is not very good at.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is just the master of an old style of Hollywood filmmaking in terms of setting the camera in a beautiful shot and then maybe moving it along a track and then bringing elements that are dangerous and new and thrilling into it. And I think he can do a...
Well, it was shot by Stephen Burham, who had done The Outsiders before this.
Well, it's like this...
And so I think that I think that a lot of that credit has to go to the cinematographer, but it doesn't overcome the...
You get the sense that they're like, let's go, let's get fucking intense with this.
It doesn't overcome the source material, which is written, by the way, by S.E. Hinton and Coppola. They collaborated on the script, so there's no excuses about that.
You saw her? There's a shitload of cameos in this. You saw S.E. Hinton's cameo? They're going up the stairs after walking down the alley when there's a lot of people on the street, and one I'd say she looked about 35 though. I think she might have been older. She comes by and she goes, "You want a date?" And he goes like, "No, I'm good." And then she talks to their friend who's always writing in the notepad, and that's S.E. Hinton.
Nice. How did you know that? How did you find that?
I looked it up on IMDb.
Nice. You were doing some homework.
I did some homework. The bartender is Tom Waits.
The movie's set in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tom Waits is so ridiculously cast to be ridiculous, and he is in a delightful way. I kind of wish the whole movie was just Tom Waits pretending to be a bartender.
That would have been a better movie.
Because he's really clearly pretending to be a bartender.
Yes,
which is kind of awesome because you don't buy him as a bartender. This guy is way too hip.
Do you know
to be a
who
bartender.
Diane Lane's little sister was?
Tell me.
Can you guess? I bet you can guess.
Diane. Oh, in the
movie.
In the movie.
Yeah, who played her little sister?
I don't know.
Sofia Coppola.
Oh, right. I did notice that with the bad teeth. Oh, yeah.
You're like, hey, who's that child actor that's way too ugly to be in a film?
Way too ugly. We talk about ugly duckling syndrome. Boy, she looks a lot better now.
She does. Yeah.
Sofia Coppola was not looking too good. She had no chin.
She's a lot cuter by Godfather 3, which she ruined for reasons besides her looks.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because she
was very cute in it.
She couldn't act.
Yeah, she was one of those 1960s kids who grew up in Las Vegas that sounded just like they grew up in the 70s in Los Angeles. You know, one of those people. Well, what do you like about this movie?
I love the look of the movie. I love what he does with the fish, where the fish are in color, but everything else is black and white.
Isn't that kind of dumb? I mean,
it's a very simplistic idea, and this movie doesn't. The sad thing for me is that Rumblefish doesn't have all that great poetry, all that great street poetry of The Outsiders, the S.E. Hinton stuff about Pony Boy and Stay Gold and all that stuff. I mean, that stuff was really like speak to any 14-year-old. But this I felt like they were trying to extend the life of that scene further than it should go.
It felt like both Coppola and Hinton were trying to like write a meta sequel to The Outsiders. You know, it's nostalgic too. That like The Outsiders really feels like it's in that time. It doesn't feel nostalgic for that time.
It really
feels
does.
It feels like a film that could have been shot then.
And there's a really developed storyline in The Outsiders, and this movie just doesn't have it. It just does not have a very developed storyline, and you don't.
It's very stream of consciousness in a way that I'm not that interested in.
Yeah, in the Wikipedia page, they talk about it being avant-garde. I don't find it avant-garde at all. I find it to be pretty pedestrian, really. It's like too pedestrian.
It is like an American new wave movie in like the worst way possible.
Yeah. Coppola trying to be Godard.
There is a breathless kind of like
there is quality, but it doesn't have the humor. Mm-hmm. And also
he's very self-serious movie.
He's really relying on Matt Dillon and Mickey Rourke, who for all of their great posing that they do, because they do a lot of seriously cool posing. And I have to say, one thing that I miss about what this film and Outsiders references is coolness. Because when I grew up, you had to be cool. Everything was about being cool, and cool is gone. No millennial even knows what cool is. Like
high school.
There was Miles Davis' Birth of the Cool, and somewhere around grunge, like Nirvana, cool went away.
I think it was closer to.
I think Nirvana killed cool. That's what I have to say. It was those fucking plaid shirts, man. God damn.
Well,
that style
anytime
went on
the look is like,
way,
hey, let's
way
pretend
too
we're
long.
those guys who cut down trees. It's like you're really kind of abandoning the sleek intensity of the motorcycle like era.
I mean, you know what?
You know,
Wait. So the story is Rusty James, Matt Dillon.
What the fuck is the story? I already tried to explain it, but it's
He
like
wants well, this is the story: is Rusty James wants to be the leader. He wants to revive the gangs, and he wants to be the leader.
Rusty James, I went to California. Rusty James, you gotta get out of this town. I'm your brother. And you know you gotta take me seriously.
And he wants to. And
I have an article in my name.
And he wants,
I'm the motorcycle boy.
And he wants to bang Diane Lane, and he even messes that all up because he's just sticking it in too many girls.
Diane Lane looks pea average in a schoolgirl outfit. Put her into something a little tight. Put her hair up. And she is a complete knockout. It's crazy.
She's such a knockout.
I think the thing. So like, we were talking about the period. The period's very confusing.
Yeah,
because there are cars, there are signs, there's video games that are clearly of the 1980s.
Yeah, they're playing like Pac-Man.
But I would say the thing that most threw me, that made me say like, what years is taking place, is Diane Lane's hair. It's a very interesting thing because she is shot like, Greta Garbo, and just like these very Vaseline like beauty shots.
Yeah.
But her hair is just feathered as
light on her hair.
Light on her hair.
On her,
but her
eyes.
On her eyes. But her hair is just feathered as fuck.
Oh yeah, very.
And it was almost
Farrah Fawcett.
And you just get the idea that like they tried to not make it that way, but there was just something about like the water and the humidity in the 80s. Is it just made your hair just fucking fly out like. It's also maybe like the least 80s hair ever looked like 80s hair, but it's still excessive by any like modern standards.
So that's the problem is there's just too many things that don't stick together with this 80s era movie trying to reference 50s iconography. It just doesn't come through.
You have to make choices. And like there's this line between making it too obvious what your choices are so that you can just like dissect the movie and see like, oh, you're doing an 80s movie with a 50s throwback and you can oversimplify it, and they went too far in this like middle ground of ambiguity. It's like, I don't know what choice you're going for. I don't know when this is taking place.
Well, you don't know.
I don't know if you want me to not know when it's taking place. That was a problem.
Well, and the characters' objectives and super objectives are I don't even know if they're there. I don't even know if they know what they are. I don't feel like. I mean, we know that Matt Dillon wants to be Mickey Rourke. Probably not anymore. But that's
Rusty
his
James,
motivation.
Rusty James, I went to California. And I saw your mom, Rusty James. Your mom's not dead. She's in California. And she wants you to ride off on a motorcycle. She wants you to follow the river to an ocean and then stand in front of a rear projection screen of the ocean.
No, he was really at the ocean. That wasn't rear projection.
I think that was rear projection.
Really? Nah.
I really think
he was at the beach. Come on. They filmed it in California.
I really think
they spent the $20 to shoot the thing at a beach.
It would have been very easy to
Well, maybe Coppola was still in his.
This one I did watch a 4K version of.
I'm not gonna film the Pacific Ocean. I'm going to build it on a soundstage.
Does that not sound like everything you've described Francis Ford Coppola as wanting to do?
Yeah.
Oh, you know who we've gone this entire time without mentioning?
Tell me.
Nicolas Cage.
Oh yeah, Nicolas Cage when he could act.
Yeah, Nicolas Cage, almost Nick Coppola.
Yep.
Just barely no longer that.
Mm-hmm.
That is his real name, I believe, right? Like, I think that was his whole thing. Is like, I want to strike out on my own, man. I'm gonna be making my own name. Hey, Uncle Frankie, so you're shooting a new movie? Like, think you can give me a role in it?
Yeah, no, that's his story. Is that it's Nicolas Coppola, but he wanted to strike out on his own, and so.
But definitely took the roles in his uncle's movies. If they were around.
Yeah. Yeah, what's the first? Fast Times at Ridgemont High is the first movie he's in, though. And he's
that's before this.
And if you blink, you'll miss it. Yes. You'll miss him.
My this whole thing of like wanting to make it on your own, but like pretty willing to be in your uncle's Francis Ford Coppola's movies reminds me of my uncle is
Nick. Wait, what's the comic book character or something? Cage. That's where he got the idea from. Was from a comic book. That's where he took the name from.
Luke Cage.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
So my uncle's a musician who I would normally give a shout out to, except for this story. So I have an uncle who's a musician, and he performed a time with Jacob Dylan,
Okay.
Bob Dylan's son.
Uh-huh.
But if there's a line in his contract that you're not supposed to mention that he's Bob Dylan's son when they're on stage. Like, you don't go like, and up next is thank you for Bob Dylan's son, Jacob Dylan. You know,
Right.
He's his own man.
Of course.
He's in the Wallflowers, for God's sakes. He's
Now, see, here's the funny thing. When you say the Wallflowers, because I was in a band called the Rockin' Dogs in San Diego, and we used to gig all the time with this band called the Wallflowers.
Not
this
the
guy,
same band.
Dave Wallflower.
His name was Dave Wallflower?
For our purposes, yes, it was. And he was a motorcycle guy. He had a Norton that he rode around, and he was very Iggy Pop influenced. So he would go out in the audience and stuff, and he had this one song called "Survive the Jungle," survive the jungle, survive, and then he would make like helicopter sounds. It was great.
Can I finish my Jacob Dylan story then?
Yeah, okay.
Well, so this whole thing, like Nicolas Cage, just like I want to get big on my own credit. You know what his real last name is? Jacob Dylan.
Uh-huh.
It's Zimmerman.
Of course it is.
Because he's Bob Dylan's son.
Right.
So it's this like beautiful hypocrisy of don't mention I'm Bob Dylan's son. Also, I'm gonna go by Bob Dylan. Well, I'm gonna go by Jacob Dylan.
Well, that's just not putting too fine a point on it, right?
I think it's hypocrisy. You know, I think if you're gonna make it your own, just be in these little art house movies and like don't try to like. You know, hey, could you throw me in as like a Rob Lowe type character in this next one? They're also old as fuck looking in this movie.
Who's that?
All like Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
And Chris Penn.
Yeah.
Him.
Oh, the late Chris Penn.
The late Chris Penn, who is just fantastic. And
yeah, he's great.
Is it more than just Reservoir Dogs? Was he in another Tarantino? It's the only one I can think of right now. But he's fantastic in that. He's rather unmentionable.
Yeah, very unmentionable.
So you have this movie to compare it to The Outsiders again. There is it's technically an ensemble movie, but more in the way that you're just like.
Well, here's what
here's
what I came away from. I felt like after watching it that I knew too much about Mickey
James.
No, well, certainly that. I knew too much about Matt Dillon's and Mickey Rourke's little ticks, little acting tricks, because they are just pouring it on so thick. And Coppola's letting them do it. You know, he's giving them free reign, and it really. I mean, it's such stylized acting, and of course it's all drawn from James Dean. You have to give props to James Dean because these guys are they're doing their version of James Dean.
Everyone does like a version of James Dean of just like the James Dean that shows up in trailers. He's actually like a very weird, interesting actor who who he's most like, James Dean, is Jimmy Stewart.
No, James Dean. No. James Dean. That's not true. James Dean.
I think in a great way. I mean,
but he invented this minimalist style that no one else could do, and he. You know, if you go back and he only made 3 movies, so it's not like it's hard to do. Right. But you go back and you look at East of Eden, and it's James Dean pulling off these acting magic tricks. Really, is all it is. It's an illusion, but because he was ahead of his time. He had thought this stuff out, and he had created for himself this stylized approach to characterization. And I'm not saying it's a cheat, but it's not. It's more presentational than it is representational.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And what I was saying sounds like the opposite, and I want to defend it for a second. Is looking back, it is a lot more specific than you remember, Like, I think there's a version of James Dean, which is like the Halloween version, and a version that these two actors are doing the two extremes of, which is just like him you might see in like a trailer, where you have you have Dylan who's doing like the cool guy, disaffected. What, babe? What did you say? And then you have Rourke who's doing the kind of philosophical, staring off in the middle.
Really,
distance
less is
guy.
more.
Yeah,
And
David Duchovny School of what did you say?
And everything is so modulated. The line readings, and even the way they're recorded, they're so, you get this huge contrast with the dramatic material at hand, because they're underplaying everything, and the volume and the modulation on their voices is so contained. It's not honest. It's not authentic.
Right.
But let's just get it straight. After this movie, Coppola made The Cotton Club.
I don't even know if I've heard of that film.
Well, you're not missing anything. But then he made Peggy Sue Got Married, which is Nicolas Cage. It's great. And so now I'm rethinking my decision about Coppola, and I think that his last good movie was Peggy Sue Got Married.
Keep going. This is a very interesting list, though. It gets real weird.
Well, so
because there's going to be some that I think are going to shock people that they're not going to know that it existed.
Gardens of Stone.
What the fuck is that?
Tucker, the Man and His Dream. Hold on.
What are these movies?
We'll come back to them in a minute.
This is like the guy who made The Godfather.
Right. Then he did Godfather Part 3, which just sucks eggs. And then Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay, yeah, it's
and then Jack.
Oh God,
that's right. And then
I do pull that out at parties.
And then
I'm like, hey guys, remember Jack? And they're like, Francis Ford Coppola directed it.
And then The Rainmaker, and then Youth Without Youth, and then
what?
Tetro,
what?
And then Twixt, which is a very bad horror movie, and then Distant Vision.
What is this shit?
That's right.
What? There's one about like Edgar Allan Poe or something, and it's got a scene.
That's Twixt, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and there's it's Edgar Allan Poe, but there's a scene where a speedboat hits.
It's in black and white, right?
I think it's in black and white. I just gotta know it from.
Or I don't know.
A clip
I guess
about
it's
it.
not in black and white. I've seen it. It's really bad. It's really bad. That's the one with Val Kilmer and Bruce Dern and Elle Fanning and
like,
Ben Chaplin.
It's like, hey man, you like the Empire State Building?
Yeah.
Okay, so the guy who made it, he made another building. Okay, it's the Sears Tower. That's a great building, right? You like that building? Are you a fan of the Sears Tower? Great building, right?
Yeah.
Objectively.
Yeah.
You know what else he made?
Hey, this little trailer park over here.
Yeah.
He made the little the trailer that fell apart.
Yeah,
the one
I heard about that.
it just
You know the Taco Bell on 12th Street?
right.
He made
Like the bench.
He made the bench next to it.
Right.
Right.
Right. I heard that.
There's a bus stop. There is a bus stop, up in on the Upper West Side on 95th Street. Okay, you know this bus stop? He took a shit on it one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, and
That's
there's
the
a
same guy.
little plaque there.
No.
No plaque?
Actually, Martin Scorsese made the plaque.
So what do you if you were gonna sum up his career in 2 words, what squandered promise
2 words?
or
2 words?
2 words, yeah.
Die young.
No. That's no. You have to.
Don't refine his career in 2 words.
No,
Sum it
yeah,
up.
something a title, squandered promise, or
I mean, but also I don't. It's like who gives a shit? Like he's not hurting the world with these movies. Like it's fine.
Really. Really? Wait a minute. You're telling me that
a prequel.
You're telling me that the
trilogy.
2 hours of your life that you spent on Jack, you don't want them back?
Oh, well, I mean, like the problem is like Jack was a movie I watched as a kid, and I have like fond memories of because it's one of those.
Robin
movies.
Williams. Is that?
Robin Williams. J-Lo's the teacher.
Oh
yeah,
Lord.
No, Jack, it's great. He graduates and his ass is hanging out, and it's like that's actually maybe a sex crime.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah, if he makes out with another, like a kid in his grade, he's gonna get arrested. That didn't come up. That should have been an issue. It's like, how's the kid ever gonna get laid?
Well, times have changed, as we know, but I think that Peggy Sue Got Married that I would say that's his last good film. I love Peggy Sue Got Married. Have you ever seen it?
just bits on cable, but not much.
It's pretty good. I love it when Nicolas Cage is there with Teresa Russell, and but I think that there's like a weird mother-son thing going on now that I think about it. But anyway,
no.
she says,
Flashbacks to last
they're
week.
They're in the car, and she says, she's really frustrated because she wants him to, throw down.
So his mom was in California in this movie.
She says, can you take it out? And Nicolas Cage goes, "You mean my Huang?" Anyway, so on that note, Francis Ford Coppola.
What's your 2 words? What you get? You got. Yeah.
I don't know. I get like wasted promise or something. I don't know.
I mean, to take this seriously, it's like I don't think he could do anything besides making, I don't know, like a campaign ad for Donald Trump that would like ruin his legacy in my eyes. It's just like fascinating to me how shallow this film is. It's cinematically beautiful, but it's just I'm glad he's moved on to like making wine and other endeavors and stuff like that, because I don't feel like his heart and his genius was in filmmaking very much longer after the 70s.
It's a cautionary tale. I think really what happened was that he gave too much of himself, and I think that's what happened with Nicolas Cage. I think that Nicolas Cage did Leaving Las Vegas, and he put too much of himself into that character, and he came away from it beat up, and he said, I am never going to invest that much in a character again. And that's when he stopped being an actor, and everything that Nicolas Cage does is just shoots from the hip, and it's crappy.
That's the thing. It's a similar story with his uncle. I believe it's his uncle. Yeah, it's his uncle.
Yeah.
Francis Ford they needed money.
Mm-hmm.
That's why him and Puzo made Godfather 3. That's why he made a lot of movies before that.
Well, he threw it. Yeah, he threw it all away on One from the Heart.
And like, what do we do for money, Cole? I mean, make a shitty movie that like some dumb kids like you are gonna really love for years, and then later realize like, there wasn't really a whole lot of content there. There's worse things to do for money. So
that's true.
Whatever.
Yeah. Much love, Mr. Coppola.
Much love.
And much love to all of our fans. Thank you all for listening. Listen to us again next week for the next episode of the Grande Bouffe.
The Big Feast.